use your cell phones and mute your line if you're joining remotely. I don't know if we have anybody remotely. So we will start with roll call.
Mayor Sherman.
Here.
Councilor Burrell.
Here.
Councilor Klinkhammer.
Here.
Councilor Lundstrom.
Here.
Councilor Spradlin.
Here.
Councilor Stroud.
Here.
Number 3, approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any corrections, additions, or revisions for the agenda?
From the city staff, if the council chooses to, the majority of the work session items after item 11, we can actually put those off for another council meeting because we have a pretty long agenda. I would say after item number 12. We could actually do those two, 11 and 12, and put those other to another council meeting work session.
I bet no one has plans tonight, though, Monty. What? It's Valentine's Day.
We all planned on being here.
I move to approve the agenda with the changes as staff has put forth.
Second.
Very good. I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote.
Councilor Lundstrom.
Yes.
Councilor Klinkhammer.
Yes.
Councilor Stroud.
Yes.
Councilor Burrell.
Yes.
Councilor Spradlin.
Yes.
Mayor Sherman.
Yes. And approval of the minutes. So we have minutes from our regular meeting of January 24th, 2022, and our special meeting of February 3rd, 2022. Does anybody have any corrections or additions or revisions to either one?
I have one correction on the special meeting for February 3rd. The attendance of Yuanti, he came in right before work session, so I need to correct that.
Okay. Anybody else? We can combine those into one motion if anybody wants to make a motion to approve those both.
I would so move with Loranda's correction.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussions? Roll call vote.
Councilor Spradlin.
Yes.
Councilor Burrell.
Yes.
Councilor Lundstrom.
Yes.
Councilor Klinkhammer.
Yes.
Councilor Stroud.
Yes.
Mayor Sherman.
Yes. Okay. Now we have visitors and delegations. Citizens are invited to speak at council on any item that does not have a public hearing scheduled. Does anybody have anything to speak on to council that's not on one of the public hearings tonight? Okay, very good. So, yep, let me finish reading my little. So this is the only chance in the meeting you get to address council, other than unless otherwise invited. No formal action will be taken on any item that's not posted on the agenda due to open meeting law provision. You have a 5-minute limit, and if you have any other questions for council, there's the forms by the door that city staff can help you with. So go ahead. Say your name and your address, please.
Yeah, Chelsea Chavez, 1 Circle Drive, over there. So I am just here to invite you guys to an event that Morgan County Waste Coalition is doing. It's a coalition that's just started with myself and a member out of Weldona from the county. So our event, it's called Green Drinks. It will be on March 31st at 5 to 7, with our programming starting at 5:30. And I wanted to invite you all here because we're focusing for this first meeting on recycling, how we can expand it, and other issues that are important to sustainability of the county. And as you guys know, in Brush, we have a recycling system that is with flaws, but it is working pretty well. So I want you guys to be there, have a seat at the table, and help us understand your point of view, the ins and outs with that, and share with other county council members and people, just, people like me who feel empowered to try to expand it. So be expecting a formal invitation in your emails soon. I haven't got to it yet, but I'll get there. But Allison actually invited me to invite you in person rather than just sending an email, so you'll know a face when you see it in your inbox.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Where is it at?
It will be at the Block in Fort Morgan.
Oh, okay.
Which is the former county stakeout.
Mm-hmm. Very
Yeah.
good.
That's all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. We're moving on to management. We have a public hearing scheduled for a special use permit. I will open the public hearing and ask for a staff report from Rick Kroglian.
Good evening, Council and Mayor, Madam Mayor. I've got some additions that I found, some corrections in your staff packet, so I want to make sure I get this to you. Dan, just pass it this one down. So it's nothing new, it's just some of the things I sent to you. I think a piece of paper was left off. And then I noticed that the land application was not on there either, so I had to put that in the packet. But just want to make sure you have a complete packet, and I'll go through everything as well with you. So tonight's special use permit amendment is submitted by Chris Segelke, and he's located at 718 and a half Edison. It's, if you look at your map, you kind of see a map of where it's in the vicinity. It's basically the property that's right beside the old Ace Hardware, and it's a house in the front on Edison, and then behind it is a mobile home. So that's the property that we're talking about. So just to kind of go through, we met the criteria of the code when it talks about a land application was submitted to us. He also had paid the fee, so showing that that's there. And then if you look at the map, it kind of shows all of these addresses that are around at 300 feet were sent a mailer. And so I gave you a copy of what the mailer looks like, showing you that the code was, again, it was in, the right context. We did according to code. The sign was posted with a picture to show that we did accomplish that. City, our utilities department, Public Works put that up for us. And if you look at the table that I added, kind of shows you complete table, and we're going to walk through this in just a second, but I just want to make sure you have the right table that shows mobile home, temporary workforce housing, and RV park. Those are kind of necessary to see what the code says, because the one I gave you, it only kind of cut half of it off, so you really don't know what any of that means, so I wanted to give you the correct one. You also have in your packet the original special use permit request from 1986, and that was for the context to allow hired personnel living. It's not for anyone, but it was for the context of that. Then you have the document that says it's the minutes from the regular council meeting. So you kind of see the back history, and it's all relevant because it kind of builds a case of why it's even here today. And then you have your staff report from Karen. That was in 2013 when Segelke came back to bring it as an amendment. And then you have his permit application and his building permit to allow it. So I wanted to show you that's the history. It's a lot of paperwork, but you have to understand the context. So I just want to walk through some of the details of this with you, according to what the staff report says. The first thing that we do is we look at the criteria. Does it meet the criteria of the code? And so a special use permit, you've got to look at, is it compatible with the uses around it? Is it conforming to the code? So is it compatible and consistent? Does it conform? And does it conform to our code? Does it conform to our comprehensive plan? So anything that we do when it comes to a special use permit, that's got to be the criteria that we lay over to see if that's if it's not, then it's not appropriate. So as we do this, then you look at your zoning. So when you go, the zoning is commercial. That's where this property is located. So if you look at your zoning and you have your sections, the land use code provides, it says, the purpose of the commercial district is to provide a district for the location of a commercial use oriented along a major thoroughfare. So it's on Edison, it's a commercial zoning, that's exactly what this is. So when you look at 16640A3 of the land use, it provides the following regarding temporary uses for mobile homes. So it says, so this is a mobile home, so we gotta look at the code. What does it say about a mobile home? And again, it says temporary. That's the context of this. A mobile home located as a field office for any construction project in any land use district for a period not to exceed 12 months. That's the only allowance of a mobile home in a commercial area. It's to be temporary, it's to be a workforce, so you have a contractor to build the project, and then that was it. That's the only permitted use, period. So then if you go back and look at the intent of the residential mobile home district, it says the purpose of the residential mobile home district is to provide spaces for mobile homes and an overall planned environment specifically tailored to the requirements of a mobile home and their residents. So you see a commercial zone is for businesses, a mobile home park is for a mobile home. So intent, so if you go to look at number D, the intent of workforce housing, table 6.1, if you look at your table, it talks about, or it shows you, this is the table, it shows you temporary workforce housing. If you go to, there's only 2 allowable uses for temporary workforce housing. So if you look at that zoning, it's only acceptable as a special use request in the agricultural and industrial. That's it. There's no, you cannot put a temporary workforce housing in any other district. So just wanted you to highlight to see that. So what if it falls in a situation where it doesn't fit in any of the zonings? So for example, I highlighted on here, so if you look at residential mobile home, that's the top, MH is mobile home. So if you look for mobile home park, it's only allowed permitted, it's a right to get a permit in the mobile home. So there's no other exception, meaning I cannot even take this before you. So then if I look down to temporary workforce housing, it's only allowed in 2 areas with a special use permit in agricultural or industrial. And then you go to RV park. So what if it was an RV, a motor home that you wanted to park? It's only allowed as a special use in the agricultural or under mobile home. Those are the only 2 things. So the question is, well, what if the request doesn't fit in any of these? Does staff have discretion to make a call? And the answer is no. Our city code says I don't have the discretion. I can't override what code says. So for example, it says the director shall have the authority to determine whether a particular use falls within the use categories provided by the district use table set forth in 16660, which is what I showed you. Any use that does not fall within any of these use categories provided by the table is neither permitted by the right nor permitted by approval as a special use. Meaning I can't give it discretion, nor do you. I couldn't even bring this up to you. So that's the situation that we're in right now. So if this was brought to my attention right now, I would deny it. I have to because it's not an allowable use. Code doesn't allow it, nor can I even, I don't have the discretion to change code. So we have to look at the situation now, the history. So we'll go back and go, how did this happen? The subject property along Edison Street, which is near, like I said, near Ace Hardware, there's currently a 700 square foot single family home that was built in 1909. And then the surrounding area has been developed with mixed residential and commercial uses over the years. Now it's commercial zoning when our code was enforced and submitted. In 1986, the former owner, Florence Haley, was granted a special use permit to allow the placement of a mobile home on the subject property. The permit was granted with 2 conditions. Only hired personnel are allowed to live in the mobile home, and 2, the mobile home be removed from the property if Ms. Haley sells the property. The county assessor's records indicate a mobile home the year is 1985. Well, that's significant because it does meet the requirement of a HUD. It has to be newer than 1979. So they meet that requirement. They were good to go. The code wasn't very clear, but it was clear enough to show back then that a mobile home was not allowed and had to the only request would come to council, and at the time council could make the call at the time. So we didn't have a statutory code in place to show what our zoning districts are. That came much later. So prior to December 1st, 2008, that's when our city applied the new code. So everything else is considered in the previous it would be non-conforming. It didn't conform to our code. So this would be an example of, it was a not legally non-conforming use. So that's where we are right now. So it's provided a special use permit for a dwelling unit for hired personnel only in the commercial zone. However, placement of a mobile home in this district was not allowed. The primary objective of this prior ordinance was to review the proposed special use for this compatibility with the surrounding districts and consider if the proposed use was appropriate for the requested location. So City Council voted that because it was very specific case, they were going to allow it. And that because it didn't meet any criteria that the city had, and it was a very personal request, it was for her employees only. Okay, so that's kind of where it went. They granted that with the conditions that she can only have her mobile home. It was granted allowance, but if she were to sell it, she would lose her privilege. The mobile home would have to be removed. That was the conditions. So, where we are now is, let me go to, well, I just kind of communicate those things because that's what code requires. The code says it has to be personal, it has to run with the original location, and it has to be, if it were to be transferable, they would have to come back to City Council to request a transfer for a new owner to have the same privilege. Okay, that was the privilege that the owner had. If they were to sell it and not transfer it, then they lose the privilege. So council chose to allow this continued use of a mobile home. Oh, so in 2013, Chris Segelke bought the property and then requested to take this special use permit back to council for them to review it to transfer it to him. And he asked to remove two conditions. Remove the condition, or to give an exemption that the mobile home could stay, because the previous condition was to remove it. But second is to change the condition from hired personnel only to now anybody could live there, anybody from the community. So this is what I would call, this is where you open Pandora's box. When you open it, be prepared to expect anything to happen, because now you set a precedent. And once precedent sets, now you have examples where you can go back and say, oh, it happened there, it happened here, and then you can continue that use. It sets an example. But one thing that's difficult is it went from a very personal, specific request for personnel, because her personnel, hired personnel, were having difficulties finding a place to live, and they couldn't afford. So she put a mobile home that they could afford and keep the rents low on purpose for her personnel, her workers. Now it moved to a totally different use to anybody in the community. By the way, the council granted it and said that change could happen, but if he were to sell the property, he would lose the privilege. He would have to remove the mobile home, and no longer could someone rent this property in the same, unless you brought it back to council, which is what's happening right now. He's brought it back to council in order to ask that you would transfer it to a new owner, allowing the mobile home, and to keep the condition where he can rent it to anybody in the community. So I'll make a comment that as to date, no citizens have submitted comments about this as we posted it, so I've gotten no feedback from the community. And going through code, I had to review Karen's past request, which I've given you all the information. Karen argued that this was compatible because there was residential use there in the beginning, and it was not creating anything new. This was kind of consistent kind of thing. But then she used the comprehensive plan in order to justify of how the current conditions were. And this is where I would say I have issues because it's out of context. And so I'll read the conditions. It says, on comprehensive plan goal number 4, promote a compatible and functional system of land uses that are consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan. And she would say that this is an example of how we're creating new things to make this work. But my rebuttal is, by allowing a perpetual non-conforming use and a continuation of the amending of a special use permit, it creates inconsistent systems of land uses and conflicts with the comprehensive plan, because the context is residential. This is not a residential area. This is a commercial area. A strategy 4.1.3 says, ensure compatibility between adjacent land uses. My rebuttal for that would be saying this is not compatible because it's not residential. It's not a residential area. It'd be different if this was in a residential zoning, then I would agree that that's consistent. The issue at hand is that it's a mobile home, and a mobile home is not compatible in a commercial zoning. It's not allowed. It's not even, I cannot even bring that to your attention today if it was a new use coming to me. An adjacent land use still do not allow mobile homes in a commercial use. No matter how you slice it, it's still not allowed. Goal number 7 says, achieve a mix of housing types and densities in order to meet the diverse needs of the citizens. That's a great goal, but the context again is residential. This is not residential, this is commercial. So even though she brought that up and the council was swayed, I would say out of context. It should not have been allowed because it's not consistent with comprehensive plan. There's still a huge need for, I will say this, there's still a huge need for housing in Brush. So regardless, our comprehensive plan was trying to allow more housing, but the context was residential, allow more different types of housing units so that we can have tighter densities and allow different mixed uses. Not commercial, because our code still says not commercial. Policy 7.2 says support efforts to develop moderate income and special need housing in Brush. Again, context, housing, residential. It was not ever, our comprehensive plan does not talk about housing, nor does it have a goal to increase housing in the commercial area. So again, my comment is out of context. It should not have been approved. Additionally, the future land use concept map from the plan recommends this area as an employment area. Since Edison Street is Highway 34, is a major commercial corridor through Brush, the long-term goal is to see this area develop with businesses, not residential. So that's just a highlight. Applicants' compliant history, going to the next section now. Applicant has been very compliant. I would say he's a stellar resident and business owner / residential owner. He's stellar. He's done nothing but great interaction with me. And so this is not personal. It's not any bias. It's just facts, showing what facts say. So I would say he's been nothing but a joy to work with. So, and his tenants have been good. There's no history of abuse or nuisance or anything like that. So I'd say he is in good standing when it comes to that. So currently, as his tenants are, they're great. So as you've heard my staff report, you have 3 options, and then I make a recommendation at the end. Your first option is, should council find the proposal has met the criteria or the current review criteria, staff recommends the council to approve the request to again transfer the special use permit to a new owner and allow the mobile home to remain with the following conditions. This is the same request that was been presented the first 2 times. And that's the special use permit is personal to the new owner of 718.5 Edison. And should the future owner want to sell the property, the mobile home will need to be removed, or the applicant would have to be made, or application made to city council to review and transfer the special use permit to a new owner. So there would be a new application in the future. That's if you approve this request. Number 2, should council find the proposal has not met the review criteria, staff recommends the council deny the request and not transfer the special use permit to the new owner for the mobile home, and for the mobile home to be removed as conditioned from the August 6, 2013 special use permit. That's what, and the third is continue the request subject to new information that you would request me to go and find. That's the 3 possible motions that are on the floor. And my staff recommendation is to deny the request. It's painful to say that because we've done a lot of work on this. But the goal you set before me when I first got here was to not create any new non-conforming uses. This is a way to clean up the code and to be consistent with what was approved from the beginning and to be consistent with what the conditions said on the original special use permit. So 2 out of the 3 criteria have not been met. A mobile home is not compatible nor consistent with other uses in the commercial zone. nor is it consistent with the comprehensive plan. Current code does not allow special use permits for mobile homes or workforce housing in the commercial zoning. The original request for the special use permit was for hired personnel only, and has creeped or mission creeped and perpetuated a non-conforming use that should not have been allowed in the first place. Mr. Segelke was granted an amendment for a special use permit in 2013 to open the special use permit to allow anyone to rent the mobile home. Again, this should not have been allowed in the first place. If this request is denied, the conditions from the 2013 amended SUP requires that the mobile home be removed. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
So the 718 address, or 817, what is it? It's one of the two.
718 is
The
the
main
house.
house.
Yeah.
So that's a residence.
Currently, it's unoccupied
Mm-hmm.
because he's in the process of selling it, and he was afraid that the tenants would have to leave, and so he decided to wait till he sells it. But the sale is contingent upon this special use request.
So basically, it's already a residence.
Correct.
And so even if it's in a commercial zone,
It's
there's
allowed.
still a residence there.
That's correct.
So we're allowing it in the house, but we don't want to allow it in the mobile home?
No, what I'm saying here is the mobile home should not have been allowed in the first place. It was allowed. The condition was it has to be removed. And so that's what I'm saying, that you can allow the first one because it's a legally non-conforming use. The house was there before the code. So it's a residential use. It can continue to be a use. Now that the permit is about to expire, then my staff recommendation is to remove the mobile home, to make it so that it's conforming back to code.
So the mobile home was in before the zoning change too, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So Pandora's box.
Yep.
Can you just give a couple examples of what that might be, as in like, I'm starting a business in my garage, or all of a sudden, or something like that, where, like, can you give a couple examples?
Yeah, so the example is, there's another house. I mean, there's several houses that are still around that area. Well, they could come back and say, well, we would like to have a mobile home in my backyard so I can use it as a rental property too. Here's another conflict I didn't bring up and I didn't think about it until just now, is our current code does not allow two principal structures on a lot. And that's what this is. You have two principal structures. An accessory structure would be a shed, a little shop, but these are residential uses. The only thing the code allows is a duplex. That means they're connected. They have to be connected with two separate water lines, two separate sewer and everything. But this creates an issue that our code doesn't address.
So that's our current code.
Correct.
That was not the code in 1986.
That's correct.
Just for clarification, there was a code in '86. We changed it in 2008, we changed a few things in the code. I don't know what the code said back then, but that was one of the first things that we worked on in Brush when I got here, was getting when we say new code, we took the old code and we just made some tweaks to it. And so it's our new code. Not quite sure what was in the old code at that time.
Yeah, the only thing that I can really say for sure is mobile homes were not allowed in the commercial core. And there must have been some provision that allowed that to come to city council for approval. Like today's code doesn't allow that.
Well, that's what I think we were hung up a little. It allowed it then.
Yeah. No, it didn't allow it. It allowed it to come to you as a special request.
Oh, okay.
So that's different.
So I'm trying to look at this map and it's really hard to see. But from what I'm looking at, there's a lot of houses in what's zoned commercial, correct?
Mhm.
So what is our goal? What was the goal of changing that zoning to commercial? When houses got sold or tore down, they could no longer put houses back there? Like it's supposed to be commercial use only?
I don't think we changed the zoning there. I don't remember that occurring.
Well, I'm just curious how it went from houses to now it's commercial zoned on both sides of the street.
That would be the
I
same
don't
as
see
my
that.
question. First of all, is what year was the stick-built home? What year is that?
1909.
1909. How did it come to be in a commercial zone?
No, well, I mean, when you go back 100 years ago, it was very sporadic, and you had a house here. I mean, it's mostly homes, and then those homes, because it became a very busy corridor, then they started opening up businesses there. So you had Clayton Street, and then Clayton began to grow to Edison, and then Edison began to grow more businesses down.
So you guys are saying that this commercial zone that has all these houses has always been a commercial zone?
Our code says it has. Yeah. There's not another mobile home like this in the area.
So I drove by this just to see exactly what it was. And I gotta be honest with you, I never even knew it was there. But I guess my biggest question is, what do we gain by removing a residence, other than just tidying up a possible code error from 20 years ago?
Yeah. So, that's a good question. We have a housing shortage, it's needed, right? So on the emotional side, I go, ooh, we gotta do something. On the other side, I go, all right, how many times do we have before we can actually clean up our code to make it consistent again? There's supposed to be businesses here. That's what our code says. You are correct. I didn't even know it was there either until I went and looked at it. It's very discreet, and we've never had any issues from the residents, ever. So there's that side of like, well, should that be the prevailing thought of how I make decisions? Because it's always been fine? Or when opportunities come up, do you try to clean it up? And so my goal always is, you gotta look at the situation. He could purchase a property and relocate the mobile home in the right place. So it could either go in Valhalla, or it can go into another mobile home park, or in the south where we do have a mobile home park designated in that area, it could be relocated in that area. So here's a chance to clean up code. Here's a chance to make it consistent with what it was supposed to be. And so that's my recommendation, is that you look at that and not create new non-conforming uses. So is it good to continue to make a decision where what the intent starts is now different than what the original intent was? So it was never intended to allow that. The city council only accepted it because it was very personal and it met that specific need. And it had conditions that it had to expire.
Given that this is a public hearing, can we hear from the applicant?
Well, that's kind of,
Yes.
When we're done with
that's,
the,
yeah, that's,
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
okay.
yeah, he has a,
so,
Go ahead, Larry.
so when you said Pandora's box, what you're saying, Rick, is that as long as this exists, it leaves it open for other things like this to exist, right?
Yeah. They-
I mean, I'm
I
sorry.
mean, I could defer this to Dan, because legally, I would say we'd have to talk to Dan, but there is the precedent has been set that we have allowed it and we perpetuate an allowance. So,
So,
Dan?
Yeah, I think the issue you guys are really looking at is legally non-conforming pre-existing. And the idea in general is you want to never increase the degree of non-conformity, right? You don't want to say, oh yeah, here, put 5, 6, 7 more mobile homes on that property. But in the event, like, let's just take the stick-built house from 1908, that's already there. What your code says is, to the degree that you're not enlarging it, you're not changing it, that can stay there. So right now where we are is you have your main structure, your mobile home. It would seem to me that if you're going to loosen the requirements and just let anyone, not just an employee, rent that, that's increasing the degree of nonconformity, because those rules were set there to limit the number, or the nonconformity that was there. To the extent that you want to let that mobile home stay there and not remove it, I don't know, that's your call if you're increasing it or not. There's the argument to say it's been there for 40 years and you're not really increasing it. There's the argument to say that when ownership changes, this needs to be reviewed, and if you're not reviewing it, then you are increasing the degree of nonconformity. That's essentially what I see as the two, am I understanding that correctly? As the two things is, do you allow it to stay with the change of ownership, and do you allow just anyone to rent it?
Yeah.
I mean, the original reason it's there is no longer the reason, right?
Correct.
I mean, so it's kind of morphed into something it shouldn't have been in the first place. Because
Yeah.
originally it was when Miss Hallie, was it?
Yeah.
Sold it, that had to go away,
Correct.
and then it didn't do it. So it's not even the original reason it's there is no longer the original reason.
Right.
I guess where I'm struggling a little bit, maybe it's because I don't fully know what's gonna happen with the property net, you know. Is this all coming up because they're trying to sell it?
Correct. Yeah, if he kept it,
What's
he would
happening
allow
to the
it.
family that's already in the mobile home?
I don't know.
Because I have a real hard time kicking a family out of a house just to conform to some code that we can clean up our code by just not allowing it anymore. And in the situation where that thing ever left, it could never come back. But I just don't see what we gain here other than compliance, which we all want. I totally understand. I totally understand where you're coming from. I just have a real hard time kicking someone out of their house just because of it's been there since 1986 and changed a little bit of a wording in the conformity. So I don't.
Could there be another option is for council to approve in that we allow for the change of ownership, but it would not continue past the current renters? Once the renters have exited of their own accord, then at that time it would need to be removed. Would that be an option?
How do
Because
we
I
know?
agree, I wouldn't want someone
Yeah,
to be
but
kicked out of their house.
How do we know though?
I was just say that would, that could happen, but it's,
You would know
didn't
by
you
change
say
of
something you
utilities.
can't bind future council? So you could create
Yeah,
a
you do.
condition.
You do
Well,
need to
we've
be
already been
careful about that, but.
Yeah, we've already been bound by the council that made this decision.
No, because we can
Well,
do
no,
exactly
it's
what they did.
that's what, this is the most appropriate time to make a decision because it's about to expire.
So,
You know, if he were to, well, it's actually conditioned, it's contingent upon a sale. The current owner will back out if this gets denied. And so then they'll have to, the residents will have to stay in there, because he can't sell it. He would have to find another place for his residents to go so that then he could remove it, to then try to sell it. So he can't kick them out, but if it gets transferred, then they'll stay. If it gets denied, they have to stay too.
But we're approving the special use permit, correct?
Correct.
And once the permit's denied, doesn't that mean they have to remove the?
It will,
Or
if
is
he
it
sells
only
it,
under the condition
if
of
he
the sale?
sells the property, but the current owner, the current buyer has a contingency that, he walks away if this gets denied,
so
meaning
the
the.
special use permit needs to get transferred to the new
Correct.
owner.
If it gets transferred, then the residents can stay. If it gets denied, the residents can stay because it can't be sold. They would have to find new arrangements, then they could bring it back here to be transferred for a new time. So currently, there's not owners, tenants in the house part. There is tenants in the mobile home, but that's still contingent. So I think that there's still leeway to, you could suggest something like that, but then how do you apply that? How do you actually go, I'll let you stay for a year, and then you have to leave 2 years, and it may be forever, but they would still be kind of grandfathered in.
So we have, we need to let the applicant make a presentation, and then we'll have public testimony, and then we'll have opportunities to ask more questions, so. I will invite the applicant to come forward. Tell us who you are.
Chris Segelke. The name of my business is Challenger Leasing LLC, is what the property is owned under. And thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about this here tonight. So I do have the property under contract, but the way it sounds, the people that are interested in buying it, would not continue with the contract, if the mobile home is not allowed to stay there, and they also are likely to live in the house. I mean, they're the buyers that are lined up right now are not necessarily just investors. They're thinking about living in the house there. So to me, it'd be beneficial to to have a owner occupied in one of the houses there on the property. Even though it is a mobile home, but it doesn't really look like a mobile home. I appreciate the members that did go look at the property, because it's got wood siding on it, and it to me, it looks a lot better than a mobile home. It don't even really leave the impression of being a mobile home, you know, it's just, I mean, when you first glance at it, if you're driving along by that road by 7-Eleven, you know, and you glance over there, you know, unless you look kind of close, you know, you'd have to kind of think about it, wonder if it truly is a mobile home. You know, so to me, it doesn't really like downgrade the way the town looks, you know, because it just, to me, it looks good like it is. You know, we talked about the housing shortage, you know, so I just think it's just extremely important, you know, extremely important to me, you know, you know, I haven't talked with the housing, Air Realty, you know, which manages some property for me, or was managing some property for me, you know, but there's not really any place for people to even move to, you know, I mean, you know, I asked her, you know, what if this tenant did have to move, and I said, do you have a place for her to move? She says, no, I don't have anywhere in Morgan or Brush, you know, for the tenants to even move to. Currently, not in February, not in March, you know, so. Yeah, and I live in Missouri. I'm in Missouri most of the time. I got a farm here, so I'm in Colorado part of the time, but you know, it's just harder for me to manage, you know, so I'd like to sell it, you know, and you know, maybe concentrate on rental units in Missouri, where I'm there a lot in Missouri a lot more often. You know, I guess you know, I just think of it as being grandfathered in. You know, I realize there's a lot of things going on that Rick talked about, you know, but you know, I just think it's been there so long, you know, and it hadn't been any problems, you know, and it doesn't look bad, and I just don't see the benefit of you know, after all this time, that, you know, why would it have to leave now, you know, and so I'm not 100% sure on the contract I got now. I mean, hopefully it would go ahead and close on the contract I have it under now, you know, and they've actually extended the original contract to purchase, you know, just to give me enough time to, you know, we was hoping to get it in the January council, but it ended up being on this deal here, so I'm not 100% sure this current buyer would complete. I mean, they sound really interested in their, you know, at this point they're really interested in continuing to do that, you know, but you know, I would like to make it possible for, you know, if this deal would happen to fall through, you know, that you know, another person could purchase it also.
How long have your renters been there, sir?
I think like a year and a half or so.
An idea, I don't know, we talked, Austin's kind of idea, kind of, what if it did get denied, but we gave it a solid year before that had to be gone? It would give those people at least a year to find something. It would give them a window, right? If that's the way we went.
So then we can probably ask staff about.
I mean, because at that point, a year's a year, you know what I mean? We have that date down.
I do have a question. When is the lease run up, the current lease?
It's month to month, you know, so it kind of could go on forever, you know, I mean, I think Air Realty done a lot of that, you know, where month to month, you know, a lot of times goes on for years.
Do you happen to know if the people that are looking at purchasing it are planning on renting the trailer, mobile home, or are they living in both?
I'm not.
I'm sure you don't know, I just didn't know if it had been mentioned to you, if they plan to use it as an income property or what?
Yeah, I think they plan to live in one and use the other one for income property, you know, but I really feel like it's long term. I have my doubts that the current buyers would complete the sale, you know, if there's a limitation on how long the mobile home could stay, or like like was talked about before, if these tenants would move out, then the mobile home would have to leave. I think their long term, you know, to make their loan payments and everything, you know, they're counting on income, or I think a lot of buyers would be counting on income from the rental properties for, you know, what, for decades, you know, as opposed to, you know, trying to purchase, then maybe after a year, then not have the income from the rental units.
Well, properly like that is hard to get a loan on anyway, having two.
Yeah,
two
the loan,
houses
and
on a loan, on a property.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
Oh, I was
That's
just
the
gonna say on that, yeah, I think the loan, pretty much every loan would just mainly be structured on the house, you know, and then, the mobile home is more like that as, like a source of income, but not really, not so much as collateral.
Right, but then it's not a conforming mortgage anymore, so they'd have to do some special things to qualify for that, but that's a whole nother.
Although my mortgage is, my,
It's a whole other beast.
But that's not, we're not here to.
yeah, my bank actually did take the mobile home as a small amount of collateral, but, I mean, their main thing was on the stick-built house, but they do have the mobile, they have the title to the mobile home on my loan.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay, thank you.
very much.
Thank you, sir.
So now members of the public have the opportunity to make statements either in support or in opposition of the application. Anyone address anybody here to make public comment on this public hearing item?
I will.
Okay.
So Chelsea Chavez, One Circle Drive. What a time for me to attend a city council meeting, because Florence is my grandmother, and I actually grew up in this home for a part of my childhood. So I can just tell you that I do agree with Councilmember Spradlin, as in really to think about what do we gain from denying this request. Housing is in shortage everywhere. It's a well-maintained property, and if the people, the current buyers or the buyers who are thinking about it want to be in the area, if we're thinking about commercial use and keeping our businesses alive, what better way than to get someone there who's gonna live there and rent out the property? So I really think you should just consider, what does the decision say if we're to remove a home that someone can live in? That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have some, if anyone on council has any further questions, now's the time to ask them.
I would be curious, and I was just trying to look, but I can't find anything quickly, of the cost of moving it to a trailer park and the cost of buying a trailer park spot. Just for the sake of, it would be a shame to take away a home, but I wonder how much it would cost to move it and find a new place for it. And to put that within the contract as you're selling it or whatnot. Obviously, I'm assuming no one knows that, but that would be something I'd be curious about.
Anybody else?
I don't really have a question. I mean, is this an appropriate time for discussion on it?
Yes, well, we'll do a motion to close the hearing and then we can do discussion, but you
Okay,
can.
I'll wait then.
Okay.
I did have a question for Rick. On the last agreement that allowed the trailer to stay, was the language very clear and understandable that this is the last time it would be extended? How was that truly worded?
I mean, in your report, I gave you the document. Let me find it and I can read to you.
There's a lot of documents here.
I know, I'm sorry. Again, this is not an easy situation, because you had to dig up the history of finding out what was going on and what was the actual request and the conditions, and so,
Monty, I believe what it said is, in the event that it was sold and they wanted these two conditions to continue, they would need to bring it back to council and get council's approval.
Okay, so no, this is the last time or anything
I
like
don't
that?
believe I
There
saw
was,
anything
there
like
was
that.
two
it never said
specifications
last
too,
time,
right?
it just said conditions are, the mobile home has to be removed. If it's sold, it has to be removed, and that it's personal, that this is not like a community thing that anybody can do, because then that kind of sets a right by use. So it had to be a special use, it has to be personal. It has to be personal, because that was one of the conditions to even come before a special use permit.
Wasn't there two specific, Mr. Segelke asked for also? Oh, I read it today somewhere.
I'm trying to find it again, hold on.
You know what I'm talking
It
about,
actually
Yeah.
says right here, conclusion and recommendation summary, the special use permit is personal to Mr. Segelke. Should Mr. Segelke want to sell the property, the mobile home will need to be removed, or application made to city council to review and transfer the SUP to the new owner, which is what we are doing right now.
Correct, and that's the same verbiage that was in 2013, which I added, so it'd be consistent. So I didn't add anything, it's just said the same conditions. And so, yes, I understand, and you guys have discretion. This is the only time this is kind of worthy to take this before you. Because this couldn't come back today. This situation would not happen, because it would be denied from my office. Because you can't create two principal structures on one lot, that's a denial. And two is I can't even put a mobile home in the commercial area, denial. So
Okay.
that's it.
With that though, you were stating earlier that you'd be opening Pandora's box. So with the statement that you just made, they would be denied, if anyone else would be denied if they tried to put a secondary primary structure on a property. Is that not right?
That's true.
So we wouldn't necessarily be opening Pandora's box.
But that's a legal thing. I mean, once you set precedent, they can say, has it ever happened this way? And the answer would be yes.
Not since the code changed.
I don't know.
Well, that we
would be
know
a
of.
legal
I'm not
question.
aware
So
of.
I'm reading through it right now, but usually the non-conforming section of the code says this won't set a precedent, and if they're specific to the permit, people will always make that, yeah, my neighbor did it argument, but I'm
So
just
here-
confirming that it's in there.
Code does also say that if it gets damaged, it can be repaired up to 50%. If it's greater than 50%, they cannot repair it. It'd have to go to new code. So, and if it's damaged, they have 1 year. And if they don't make it with a year, they lose their privilege. So that code does say that. So, you know, the mobile home can stay as a perpetual use in a sense, as long as council approves that. But once it gets damaged or removed, like one of the questions the appraiser called and asked and said, if this home caught fire, could it be restored? The answer is no. It's not allowable use. That creates a new non-conforming. Now, if it's damaged, yes, it can be restored, but not if it's burned to the ground. It cannot be brought back.
Interesting.
So that's just information, facts. You guys have the call. You do have the right to continue this. I mean, not continue it, to allow a transfer to a new owner. So that is your right to do that, even though I give you my recommendation. So.
Thank you. All right, I would look for a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion?
About the motion to close or about the topic?
Well, we'll have the time to talk about the topic too. There will be discussion
Okay.
for that too.
I don't have anything.
Okay, roll call.
Counselor Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Counselor Stroud,
Yes.
Counselor Lindstrom,
Yes.
Counselor Corral,
Yes.
Counselor Spradlin,
Yes.
Mayor Sherman.
Yes. Okay, so the next item is the decision for the special use permit application for 718 and a half Edison, for Chris Segelke and Challenger Leasing.
Okay.
So, does anybody have a motion they'd like to make? We can have a discussion. Look for a motion.
I move we approve the special use permit.
A second?
I'd sure like to have the discussion first.
Yeah.
Because somebody could second it, and then we could have the discussion,
Second.
and then so then we can have the discussion. Because then we can vote, and if nobody else wants to, then it'll go down. But,
Cool. Yeah,
So-
second then, please.
okay.
Okay, so we have a responsibility, we give staff direction and we tell them, we want to enforce our codes, we want to make sure that things are compliant, and that is what staff is doing to the best of their ability. However, a housing shortage is something that extends to the entire state and it's just horrible right now. So I definitely wouldn't want to see the loss of not even a single home. I am not really excited, Dan, about maybe putting forth any conditions upon future council, even though that's been done to us here. However, I would like to see, maybe an approval, but with limitation. The approval being that, you know, once the residents, current residents leave the residence, then that's the end of it. And unfortunately, if that means that someone who is looking to purchase the property decides they don't want their property, that's their call. Because it is a code violation, and, you know, they can, that's really not for us to decide. But you can know if someone moves out, especially if someone tries to make application for new utilities, you can absolutely know if someone moves out. I don't want to force someone to lose their home, I don't want to force someone to lose the sale, but at the same time, we have a responsibility to support our staff in the direction that we've given them.
I think Joanne has a comment.
So that's my piece on
I
it.
just, before you go too far in the utility billing side of that,
Probably all.
our ordinance, our code says that all utility billing stays in the name of the owner. Unless it's a business, we have no properties in the renter's
The
name.
electricity is through Excel, is it not?
Yes.
So, and that doesn't apply to them, does it? I believe the residents have to have the electricity in their own name.
For our utilities
We have
has
no
to
access
stay
to
in our
Excel
name.
Yeah.
records, so.
But we don't have any access to Excel records.
Dana, something?
I think what you're concerned about, and take my opinion for whatever it's worth, is this continuing on and on and on. One thing that is in your code about non-conforming uses is if it ceases to exist for 12 months, then that non-conformity is no longer grandfathered in. So you already kind of have a, you know, let's say the current renters, the property sells, current renters move out the next month, and they don't rent it for 12 months. That building is no longer grandfathered in anymore. So you do have that safety net kind of grandfathered in your code. And that puts a lot of burden on staff to dig through records or maintain or monitor, is what it comes down to. Like, I like where your head is going, but it's difficult, and I think that's what you're getting at, to.
We don't have a way of monitoring
Yeah.
the renter that's in there.
But you would have a way of monitoring if the property owner changes again, they would have to come back under, I guess, Councilmember Spradlin's motion. And you know, if they come back and there's been a bunch of problems, that's a real easy question for council, I would think.
I guess my biggest thing is I don't see what we gain by getting rid of the house. That's my biggest holdup with it. If it was really run down, you know, in complete disrepair, or was just completely out of the norm, other than the fact that it's a mobile home, but out of the norm of residents being there, like if it was the only thing there and it was surrounded by stores, I might feel a little different about this, but there's multiple houses. And there's a duplex, I think, right next to the red house, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's houses all along that commercial zone. So I guess I just don't, other than the work you put into it, Rick, which I absolutely appreciate, and I wholeheartedly believe your heart's in the right place, and so is your recommendation, I just don't see the benefit. And I think we can clean up the Pandora's box thing just with our existing code, and the fact that we do have some kind of history to this. So we're not just gonna allow somebody to park another mobile home behind a house on Edison Street, because they can't. We can't even allow that unless we completely rezone or change the code, so.
I just wanna make a point of clarity, is I had no choice, because this is what
Okay.
code says. I have no choice but to say that to you. I did the facts only led to one direction. I have to deny. That's it. I cannot change the facts
That
to
makes
allow
sense.
this, because then I would not be giving you correct information.
That's,
So I feel tied by the situation.
I
So,
appreciate it.
If that makes sense.
Kevin?
Just assume it's, So, probably a stupid question. I'm not a big fan of kicking the can down the road either way here. So could we just avoid the special use permit and just forever, done? Rezone it, or I don't know what the proper term would be. So we don't have to use the special use permit every X amount of years when it's sold. Could we just say, this is okay from now forward, stop kicking the can down the road? Like, how would we go about that?
Okay, so that's another situation that's an option, but it's highly unlikely. That's what we're negative, we don't try to do that, cause that's called spot zoning. Just to correct it, to affect that, cause then now what's gonna happen is you set precedent, and now all of a sudden you have, postage stamps everywhere
Right.
of weird, non-conforming zoning. So that's why, is it compatible, is it consistent with code? That's where you have to make decisions so that you're consistent and compatible with the same usage. So.
I kinda like having to reapply for this, the
Yeah.
special use permit, because what if he sells it and it just turns to crap and, then when they sell it, we have enough, there hasn't been any problems up to this point, so, it's not that big a deal, but what if, it becomes a problem? Then we've got that
Safety.
ability to not approve it if it's a problem and somebody else comes forward.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I wish we could go back and ask whoever the council was that zoned all this commercial, what the goal was. Because like I said, there's houses all along that zoning that are, it's all commercial. And there's, I don't know, 15, 20 residents right there. So I mean, the zoning thing is what really is hanging me up. And those houses will always be there. I mean, well past what we're gone. So I don't see why taking this one out of it, like I said, I just don't see how we gain anything here.
Larry?
Are there any other, you said there's no other situation like this specific one. Do we have other special use permits for some of those other houses, like in a different way?
So that's a good question. You in a commercial zone, in order, let me stand up, sorry. I need to address the mayor. You are supposed to get a special use permit to allow residential use in a commercial area. So every situation should come before you for allowance. Does it happen? No, because you only know it when you flag it somehow, or somehow it's brought to your attention. If not, out of sight, out of mind. You don't address, and it's the same thing you told me when I first got here. I found so many non-conforming usage, fences and everything else, and you're like, don't worry about those. Only focus on the ones that come to your desk that you can stop a continuation of one. And that's what this is. This is an example of, we have a chance to stop a non-conforming use, to conform it back to what it should have been. But at the same time, it is, you have to make a decision on what's best for the community, right? And so you're looking at the emotional impacts as well, not just what code says. I can't do that. It doesn't give me an allowance to do that, those kind of things. But you have to also think too, though, if it works here for this situation, what about the next emotional situation that comes in? Are we going to be bent by emotional decisions to make changes for our code?
Very likely.
And maybe that's the appropriate time to do that, is when you take, like, how is this going to conform? We do have a housing shortage, and it's gonna potentially affect this family. And so that's where you're stuck at right now, going,
I guess where I could see this actually changing is if the property was sold and the original house was gonna go away, as well as the trailer, and actually go to a commercial
Usage.
application. But I don't see that happening, at least under my council, stay here. So like I said, it's just, we're not getting anything out of this other than removing a house. And I mean, we are tidying up the code a little bit, but that's kind of just ink. That's not really anything material.
Yep.
I mean, it's hard to be the bad guy, right? There's a family there. That's
Yes.
horrible. This is the unfun part of this job, right? But code is code. When do we ever blatantly just disregard the code? You know what I mean? It sucks. I don't like that. But that's where we're at. That's where we're at. That's the code. That's the code.
But the code wasn't the code when the trailer was there,
But
other
the-
than
But the original agreement was, if they sold that house, that trailer goes away.
or,
And
there's
then
the
it
or
was-
there.
There has to be a reason, though, that we or previous councils put the code into play. So clearly the code was created to protect against something.
We are always within our privy to correct previous councils. So I mean, while they might have thought what they were doing was noble or correct or whatever, that's why I said it'd be nice to know
Why they did it.
why that all got changed to commercial anyway. You know, like, what was the thought process there? Just when those houses start getting knocked down, are we gonna have storefronts down through there? I mean, I guess that's just where I wish I
Probably
could
started
go back in
out.
time and ask somebody what they were thinking. But I just never, I don't understand why you would change a place that is primarily residential to a commercial zoning. I guess with the hopes of when they go away, they're gone forever.
I'm thinking some of those homes along there used to be businesses.
So this one
Awesome.
currently was a business too. So this one was a business and it got authorized because it was for their personnel. And so it was a business up front and they
There's
wanted to have a
probably real estate
residential.
office or
So
something.
the way that it works today is, like, commercial core allows that. So you can have a business in the front part and a residential in the back or above, like a loft. So that is allowed, but that's a different zoning, and it's on Clayton, basically. And, or around the Clayton area is allows that, but in the commercial, you have to have a special use permit. And so usually what happens is, Mr. Segelke, how long have you not had tenants in the current house?
Since the middle of January.
So,
Not
so
very long.
a few months, but if he were to exhaust that up to a year, he would lose that privilege now. He would not be allowed to have residents in there, so you better put somebody in there quick.
Can I make a little comment?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, I'm finished, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, the only reason that tenant moved out is because of the potential sale, you know, but the tenant was wanting to stay there. If I wouldn't have put it up for sale, I think that tenant would have stayed there.
Hear from the silent party over here.
Scotty.
So, you know, like, I agree with, like, Justin, you know, kicking somebody out, you know, that sucks, and especially, you know, with housing issues and stuff we have. But, you know, I don't know the situation of, you know, the financial situation of the people that are renting or anything like that, but there is units available over at the Brush Village. There's multiple units that are open, you know, we could look at seeing if they could qualify to go over there, so they're not just getting kicked out to the street, you know. There is units over there that I've cleaned, I've painted, I've helped remodel, you know, to get them back up and, you know, rent it out to people in the community and stuff. So, like, you know, I get what you're saying. I would not want to kick anybody out. You know, that's the last thing you want to do. But we do have options to see if maybe they could get into another unit too.
That's the housing authority?
Yeah.
And aren't you on the board?
Yes.
Can I propose a amendment to the, is that,
Would you do an amendment now, or would you vote on the current?
Based on the training that we had, she could add a
add an
provision.
amendment
Yeah.
to the motion?
Add a
You can
provision to the motion.
add it, see if their motion is good, and if he still seconds.
I would propose adding to the motion, that any new owners after this one's transferred would need to reapply for the special use permit, just to, if you'd be okay with that.
That's kind of how I meant it, I just didn't say it.
That's how I understood how he meant it.
Okay. So,
I guess we just need to vote on it, so I mean, it's not gonna be hurt feelings either way, but
yeah,
speak for yourself.
everybody ready to make a vote?
Can you hold on just a second?
Okay.
Okay, I'm just checking to see if that first, with approval, that does need to be added, because that was what was first said, that if it gets sold, then that
That's how
should be added to it too, correct?
First done in 2013.
Yeah. So then it would be consistent with the same, that was not added on here.
Okay. So, roll call vote on the motion to approve the SUP with, the provision that it would need to be reapplied after, if sold again after this funds transfer.
Counselor Stroud,
Yes.
Counselor Gorell,
No.
Counselor Stratton,
Yes.
Counselor Klinkhammer,
Yes.
Counselor Lindstrom,
No.
Mayor Sherman.
Yes. So, looks like motion passes. Whew. That was probably the most intense swing we've done in a long time.
That's one of the, I think that's one of like the few times we've even been split.
Yeah.
Literally, yeah.
I just
Yeah.
thank God Rick didn't ask about chickens in that day.
I'm pretty sure that's like only the third time.
Okay, but not to be outdone, we have another public hearing.
We have to hear from Rick again.
All right, if you
So
thought,
I will open the
if you thought
public
that was
hearing.
controversial, just wait for this one.
We'll open the public hearing and have a report from Rick Kroglian, our Assistant City Administrator.
Okay. What we have tonight is a lot of documents that I'm not gonna go through because there's really nothing new. I'm sorry, there's only a slight changes from the original special use permit. This one is from Kyle DiNardo of Verizon, Vero Wireless, and this is to just do some upgrades. The old special use permit had most of these upgrades included, but the new one changes the building. They want to install an outside building right beside the tower. The previous one was a 9 by 17, and this one's a 10 by 20. So they just expanded slightly. But because there was no provision of a staff approval, it has to be brought back to you. And in the original one, they had a 1,000-gallon propane tank that would be buried, and it got approved. They're just going to do the same kind of things. So they're really just enlarging the building, but because I could not approve that from my staff approval, I had to bring it back to you. And so I wanted to, all of this is exactly the same except for the building and just the lines to connect us to it. I did add some things in the condition, so I'm not going to go through all this because it's redundant. You already have all the information, and there's really nothing new that's going to be doing. But if you look on my staff recommendation, I did forget to add something, and so I'm going to give it to you in a handout and read it to you. And if Dan needs to correct my verbiage because I'm not a lawyer, I didn't lawyer up. So, I'm just going to read the recommendation. Should council find that the proposal has met the review criteria, staff recommends that the council grant a special use permit amendment for the necessary upgrades to the commercial mobile radio system cellular service tower with the following conditions. These conditions were the same ones that Karen met from the first place, so I'm carrying them over, and then I'm just adding a couple things at the end. So in the event that the construction of this facility is not completed within 12 months of the issuance of the special use permit, the approvals granted in this permit will be deemed repealed. This is what's happened. It got repealed because they didn't build it, so that's why they have to come back. This matter does not need to reappear before the city council for such repeal to be effective. So it got repealed, that's why we're back, so we'll have to bring it back to you. 2, once the upgrades have been constructed, the burdens and benefits of the special use permit amendment shall be deemed to run with the property at law and equity and shall be burden upon and a benefit to the property and shall be binding upon the city of Brush, Colorado and the applicant's respective grantees, mortgages and successors and assigns and any person leasing, acquiring, or owning an interest in the property or the improvements built thereon as authorized and approved by the City of Brush Council pursuant to Article 16.220 F2 of the City Land Use Code, but subject to the provisions of the Article 16.220 D and E. Number 3, notice of the sale of the property or change in the operations company must be provided to the city. If they were to change names or whatever, they'd have to bring it back. The 10 by 20 equipment building must be painted a neutral color that blends with the surrounding area. These, again, are the same conditions that Karen had in the beginning. If the security fence will be locked, a knock box for emergency access must be installed on the site as required by the fire department. Number 6, CMRS facilities which are abandoned by disconnection or power service, equipment removal, or loss of lease for greater than 6 months shall be removed by the CMRS facility owner within 30 days of the expiration of such limit time. Number 7, the subject property is located in the floodplain. This is where it does make it adjustments. The city's ordinance requires new commercial building to be constructed so that the first finished floor is at or above the base flood elevation. This is estimated to be approximately 3.5 feet to 4 feet above the current grade of the site. A no-rise certificate, this is what was added, a no-rise certificate will be required by a licensed engineer from the state of Colorado to determine the appropriate foundation elevation for the 10 by 12 equipment building. Karen just suggested this is what it is, but that's not our call. we have to make sure an engineer tells us exactly where that elevation needs to start based on, since it's in the flood. So the no-rise certificate would clarify that. Number 8, screening shall be installed on fencing. Number 9, this is my added one. This is for the sake of not having to come before you again for such minor changes. But I did have to adjust it because I need to clarify at least what that means. If minor upgrades are required, applicant may present plan to Community Development Director for approval. That gives the staff approval if it's minimal. If upgrades are significant, a special use amendment will be necessary. Significant upgrades would consist of equipment to allow carriers to use the tower or upgrading to 5G, because that's now significant, which would require a review of other ordinances from city code. An applicant would have to submit a new request for special use permit. Do you want to clarify that?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. One thing I would recommend we add is that council grants the community development director discretion to determine what is a significant upgrade and what is not.
Rick, are you just tied because it's a special use permit? Because you have some ability to grant like a slight variance, correct?
No.
No?
No. I have no discretion for that. Only what code says.
Okay.
So this would allow me to say, oh, this is minimal, I can do I can authorize that.
Okay.
Which was what we've done in the past, but during this time, we didn't have that special clause in there, and I'm just making sure we add that so we can prevent a long hearing.
Sure. And all this meets our code, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Propane tanks and
So,
food?
here's another example or clarification. I spoke to the applicant this morning, and he said that there's more upgrades coming. And so he couldn't just get it all because they're gonna upgrade the antenna next, which is still, that's a minor. It's just that it's a stronger, better, higher quality antenna. This is not 5G. And another upgrade that's coming, which I put a provision in here already, but it will be to allow carriers to jump and use this tower. That's not the same as this. That's a significant upgrade. They would have to come back before you again. So it is coming, but we'll have to do it again for something significant. But if it's smaller upgrades, I can do it in-house.
So this is just taking an existing building and making it bigger?
Correct. And would you like to make comment too?
Yes.
We have an associate to the
Yes.
Okay.
applicant.
I'm not as good as Kyle, but he's my mentor, and I'm now got moved over to a different department. My name is Marcus Catlin. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Kyle just said, "I'm going to be stuck in the San Luis Valley. Can you do this?" And he sent me over the paperwork. So I'm sorry to have a computer in front of you. We're just trying to add a slightly bigger building, and the plans of a generator and the same propane tank. The same plans of a 1,000-gallon tank. The reason why is that I don't think we have that same size in stock, and they're really hard to get because of supply chain shortages and all those kind of things. So that's why we're going a little bit bigger. But yeah, there is going to be a whole bunch more of these coming, and it's across the network, and that's a federal government thing. But if there's any questions, can you pull me up here for a question?
Just to clarify?
Just to clarify, yeah.
If there's anything I missed?
Nope, that's it, pretty much, unless I missed it too. So, yeah, the tower's gonna stay the same. This is just for the grounds compound. We will come back if we're gonna change something on the tower. Yep. Any other questions I can help you with?
I have a question. So I see a small structure next to the tower on the map. Is that the structure in question?
Small structure, you're talking about the cabinet?
Yeah, I guess it would be the cabinet. So where is this current structure on the map?
I'm sorry, which?
I'm looking at your map, so this would be the one provided by Vero Wireless. In your packets, that's gonna be page 59.
It's the confusing picture.
I'm just trying to figure out where this structure is what I'm trying to figure out. Because I can see where the tower is.
Yeah,
It should be right next to the tower.
it's right next to the tower.
So it is that small square that is just to the northeast of the tower?
should be the northwest.
Maybe my map is backwards. Where's my legend? No, that's north. Yeah, right there.
Oh, the existing? Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
cabinet there. So that cabinet, we're now gonna be building a tower right next to, building a building right next to the tower.
Okay,
That cabinet is existing, but we're trying to place a building now.
okay.
So I think we were already zoned to have that building placed, is my understanding, of a 9x17. The only reason we have to come back is because it's a bigger building than what we were.
So
We had already approved it, now we're just
That's what I'm
looking
saying.
to.
We're just
It's
approving a
small
bigger
one.
building.
So the 9x17 doesn't actually currently exist?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I follow you now.
And because it doesn't exist, they didn't do it within a year, they lost that ability.
Got it now, I follow you now. I'm like, where's this building that we're
Yeah.
making bigger?
Sorry, I was,
No, it's okay, I'm new,
I was trying to find
I've
it
only been here a
too.
year, so I'm like trying to keep up with everything.
yeah, and I'm not from this area, so,
But it is gonna be within this site plan right here that is on that map, it's gonna be near the tower, correct? Okay.
and it's still within, like, it's right in our area. We're not moving it outside of where we were planning on going or anything like that. It's just a little bit bigger. So the concrete might be just a smidge bigger.
And they would
Okay.
still have to come to my department to get a permit to do it. To get a permit, they'd have to have the no-rise certificate. So these are just safeguards to make sure it's done, because FEMA requires this from us to submit data. So we're just pushing to make sure that they're following the right data too, the guidelines. They're good.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this? Nope. Okay, any questions?
I have a question for Rick. I don't know a lot about propane tanks. Is a 1,000-gallon propane tank standard for commercial use? Is there any concerns with a 1,000-gallon propane tank inside city limits?
No, what I found is that this is common for these towers.
Okay.
To be able to run the generator, they have to have something source underneath in case something goes down. So
How close is it to the mobile home park?
I mean, it's fairly close. That's why we have screening to make sure that you can't see any of this kind of stuff, so,
Propane tank's buried too,
yeah.
Okay.
underground.
You
Alright.
said it's a little bigger, right, since supply chain.
It was authorized from the first special use permit.
So the 1,000 gallons is kind of our standard size. So across the entire network, we pretty much 90% of the time, that's what we're going for. And it's just, it only kicks on if the power goes down to fuel the generator. That's pretty much it. We do routine maintenances on it, run it just to turn it on, see if everything's running okay.
Okay.
Yep.
That was my only question.
What was chickens?
Rick? It's a dollar.
Okay, anybody, I'd like to take a motion to close the public hearing if anybody is ready for that.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Counselor Burrell?
Yes.
Counselor Spradlin?
Yes.
Counselor Klinkhamer?
Yes.
Counselor Lindstrom?
Yes.
Counselor Strauch?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. All right. Item D, okay, so the next item is the decision for the special use permit amendment application at 314 East Edison Street. So we just need a motion on that.
I move that we approve the special use permit, with the provision, how did you say that, Dan? That the community development director be given the discretion to determine what is a significant upgrade.
Second.
Jinx. Any more discussion? Okay, roll call votes.
Counselor Lindstrom?
Yes.
Counselor Strauch?
Yes.
Counselor Burrell?
Yes.
Counselor Spradlin?
Yes.
Counselor Klinkhamer?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. All right, the next item is the memorandum of understanding with the Colorado Department of Public Health. Dale Colrick, Director of Public Works, will
Thank
present.
you, Mayor, Council. This will only take 3 minutes.
Hey.
Okay.
So we like to work that guy.
Last council meeting, January 24th, came forward to the council with a memorandum of understanding from Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, whereby which we would agree to collect wastewater samples, and they would agree to, at that point, by courier, take possession of those samples, analyze them, and look for the SARS-CoV-19 quantities inside that wastewater sample. It's been a proven indicator of where outbreaks are going to occur much faster than when people start running to the hospital because they're really, really sick. And so this was brought forward in work session, and what I'm requesting is council give the mayor approval to sign this memorandum of understanding. It does not cost us anything, and the data from this analysis will be made available to the city of Brush as well as the general public. Any questions?
Good job. All right, thank you, Dale. So I would look for a motion on this one.
I move we approve a memorandum of understanding with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment for wastewater surveillance.
And to give the mayor.
And give the mayor, I guess, approval to sign it?
Second.
Any more discussion? Roll call vote.
Councilor Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Councilor Staben?
Yes.
Councilor Garrell?
Yes.
Councilor Stroud?
Yes.
Councilor Lundstrom?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, and Dale's back for
Yes.
CDOT maintenance contract.
I wasn't running very far,
I
so
saw that.
that's what I said, this will only take 3 minutes. Back in August, for the councilors who may not be aware, just a little bit of a background, the city of Brush currently has a maintenance contract with Colorado Department of Transportation. One of the reasons behind having this particular contract with CDOT is that we're already here within the community. We're able to look at signs, and if they're misaligned, we can put them back right where they need to be. Snow removal, as well as some street sweeping, a little bit of some of that. We also look at patching the highway. Typically, when CDOT does their maintenance, they're out on the rural roads in this area. And so they're not really the first ones to want to react to doing this maintenance. And of course, who's going to get the complaints? We are, of course, because it's within your jurisdiction. And so in order to help with this, many communities enter into these contracts with CDOT in order for the local agency, which we are considered, to do the maintenance. These tend to be renewed every year, but I think we're back up to this one here. It's a little bit different in that they shifted their fiscal year just a little bit when it comes to these contracts to closely more align with the federal fiscal year. So back in August, council that was seated at the time did approve a 3-year contract with CDOT for this maintenance, and now we're back for the other 3 quarters. And so it is before you. Staff recommends that we approve the contract with CDOT.
I would, if you'd like to make a motion?
I move we approve the CDOT maintenance contract.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Councilor Staben?
Yes.
Councilor Lundstrom?
Yes.
Councilor Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Councilor Stroud?
Yes.
Councilor Garrell?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. Next item is finance.
I move we approve disbursements and payroll for January 25th, 2022 through February 14th, 2022, totaling $683,734.77.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Councilor Stroud?
Yes.
Councilor Garrell?
Yes.
Councilor Staben?
Yes.
Councilor Klinkhammer?
Yes.
Councilor Lundstrom?
Yes.
Mayor Sherman?
Yes. All right, next we have staff reports. Rick Krogian, Assistant Administrator, Community Development.
How much time do I have?
1 minute.
I've been busy with lots of projects, juggling, and I'm having a good time. So that's it.
Nice.
Well, thank you. Derek Boss, Chief of Police.
Good evening. I am not going to compete with Rick, but I will be short. We're busy too. I'll leave it at that. As far as personnel goes, just a few updates. Last time I was here, I told you we had a second CSO who was about to start. She, at the last minute, declined our offer, took a similar job for higher pay. And then we had another officer that we extended a conditional offer to, and I withdrew that last week after the background investigation. So we have some more openings. And then finally, this is a bittersweet moment for us, but Officer Leroy Brown has been out on medical for 10 months, and today he announced his retirement. So he will be retiring March 1st, and then March 2nd, we'll have a big party with him to celebrate that. So as we fine-line those details, I'll send that out to you, but bittersweet for us and for him. So
How long's it been with the force?
18 years. Wow. That's all I've got.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Dale Colrick, Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. Well, we've got the street with some of the nice weather, and we can do it in inclement weather as well, but the street crew's been out utilizing new infrared heater and recycler box. If you want to see some of the work that they've been doing over on Howell Street, there's some very large gaps between the asphalt, and over the years, the typical maintenance on that was just throw more crack fill in it. And now if you go down some of our streets, whether it's Princeton Court or up around Wisebarton, in and around Brush Village, you hit these bumps and you just feels like you're constantly going over railroad tracks. And so they're in the process now of, in the wintertime, when asphalt plants are shut down and you can't get asphalt, we're out there now being able to cut out these here joints that are bad and actually reusing and recycling milled asphalt to put back in there. And then we'll come back later with the infrared heater, kind of blend that all in. So if you want to see some of the work that they've been doing, I know you've been interested in it. However, I wanted them to do it a little bit first.
Practice. I drove over some of them, and it does take out the thump, the thump.
Yes.
So it works out really good.
Yes, and so we're really excited. But, you know, in the wintertime, we tend to have just a little bit more opportunity to work on these patches, but the asphalt plants aren't up. So this gives us a lot more flexibility into our street maintenance, and so it was a great purchase, and the crew really likes it, and thank you a lot. Next is, we did have a snowstorm here sometime back, a lot of wet snow, followed up by a lot of freezing, and with that comes a lot of ice. And so we had some difficulties getting some of that ice picked up. There's still probably some areas that still does have ice. If you have any, if you notice any area that needs to have that ice cut out, or if somebody comes to you with concerns, please by all means put a work order in and we'll see about getting to it. Which brings me up to our next point, is that we are due for another small snowstorm on Wednesday. It shouldn't be more or less an inch. But with that, one of the things that residents might want to consider, that when we do get these snowstorms, if they can move their vehicles off the street so we can actually get into the gutters and get that pulled out. Because what we do is we tend to pile it into the center and then snow blow it and haul it off. We do snow removal, not snow plowing. And so with that, any questions?
I have two.
Sure.
Related to that. So I had a citizen ask me, firstly, what is your attack plan when it comes to scraping the streets? Because I don't know where you go first or who gets what, so that was a question.
Mhm.
And then the second question part of that was, where do you take it?
Okay. To answer the first question is, because we do have a limited crew, and we have to try to work the entire city, our plan is always to do the primary streets first, which is we understand to be Colorado Avenue, Edison, Hospital Road, and Mill Street. And then from there, we go to our secondary streets where we look like, for example, Custer, Cambridge, those areas. Of course, we always try to get first responder areas first where we have critical in and around City Hall, so PD can get out, in and around the fire hall, make sure they have the ability to get out, access for ambulance and such, as well as going around the schools, making sure that the school buses have it. Once we've done that, we have the city broken up into basically four quadrants. There's the south side, there's the east side, there's the middle part of town, and then there is the west side. And so what we do is every snowstorm, we try to, once we've finished with all our main, our primaries and our secondaries, then we move into the residential areas. And so one time we will start on the south side, next we will go to the west side, next storm we will start in the middle, next time we'll go to the east side. But sometimes we rarely get 4 storms in any one year that requires significant removal of snow. And so you will hear the comment, oh, they haven't been by my house in years. Well, that can very well happen. So, but that is the plan of attack. The last time, the very first snowstorm we had, they did the south side and then they moved to the west side, was my understanding. However, just because we have that pattern of moving around the city, if there is a significant safety hazard or something looks really bad, always bring it to our attention, so if we have to pull off to focus on a really bad area, get that cleaned up, that's what we will do.
And where does it go?
Pardon?
Where does it go?
Yes. The second part is we have verbal agreements with other property owners within the city of Brush. One of them happens to be over here at the old pork plant. So any of the snow that's on the south side, we're able to take and in exchange for, say, mowing that big lot over there during the summertime, they allow us to dump snow there in the winter. The school district, we have sort of that same handshake agreement that as long as we mow down where the old Driscoll building was, it's still Park County, we also dump it there as well. We're always looking for extra areas. Over here on the east side of town, there's an agreement of being able to dump over there just east of the mobile home park. So, and that's what we do with our snow.
Thank you.
I got a citizen complaint.
Sure.
Citizen's me.
Okay. Put in a work order.
Just someplace that you could look at that I've noticed is consistently bad, and it's only because I've almost been rear-ended there like 6 times, is right where the old Ace building sits on Highway 34.
Okay.
That shades the road,
Mhm.
and it turns into a sheet of ice. And
Are you
it's
talking on 34 proper?
On 34.
Right. That's one of the things that we definitely will, I'll look into that. But that's one of the suggestions that I really definitely have is if you do have a property that's got a north boundary, or don't park on the south side of the street, because we have to be able to get that snow out of there. If we can't get it in and around these vehicles, and I know this is on the highway.
It gets out of there, but it's almost like the runoff from the roof or something coats the street again, and it's a melt freeze situation more than it is like a packed snow situation.
Okay.
It's bad.
Okay.
So
We'll take a look at it.
while you brought it up, and take my moment to shine.
Sure. Any others? I mean, that's what we do. Okay. Very good.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Joanne Gosling, Finance
I
Director.
have nothing this evening.
Really?
What?
Yeah, I'm trying to save time for the winter.
Want to make sure Eric has plenty. Lorraine Packard, City Clerk.
Registration is now open for the CML conference. It's gonna be held June 21st through the 24th. And so you have something at your place tonight that looks like this. I did it in a different color so that we can kind of keep track of it a little bit better. When you're ready to register, please return this to me so that we can tell what you want to take part in. And there's some ticketed meetings and events and whatnot. And then the second part of that is if you could get back to me as soon as possible. I don't even need this in yet. If you plan to attend, just let me know how many would be in your room and what kind of room you want.
It is awesome.
It is
Larry?
a highly
Definitely worth going. Huh.
What's the matter?
CML.
Yeah, it was a good time.
I learned a lot in my first year. This last go around, I learned so much. There's so many things though that it's hard to apply to such a small municipality. And there's things that I'd love that we wish we could apply to a small municipality such as co-response. I think that would be huge impact just in our county, having co-response. But I think if you can find the time to go, definitely.
It's kind of fun to talk to the other people from other towns too, see what their stuff. I mean, it really is to see what their problems are, how they deal with things. It's kind of a cool thing.
Like snowmass?
Like snowmass. Her and I are best friends. Thank you very much.
And
Okay.
something, I'm sorry to interject. Loranda got me all the open request information I asked for. I just haven't had a chance to go through stuff to figure out more information. So she's on that. It's just waiting for me now.
Oh, very good.
Can you get on that, please?
I'm trying.
Dan Crabb, our city attorney.
I have nothing tonight.
Montoras.
Couple items. The first one in regards to the watershed protection district that we're establishing. That process is going along pretty well. Loranda's been sending out the letters now to make sure that the property owners are aware of this. And then also, we've got that posted on Facebook, local newspapers. I've talked about it on the radio once. And tomorrow I'll be meeting with the county commissioners to give them an overview of that project. And then on the 23rd, we have an open house that we're inviting anyone from the community to attend. And in those letters that Loranda sent out, it's an invitation for them to attend that meeting so they can hear about what we are planning on doing. And then, of course, on the 28th is going to be our public hearing on that. So it's moving along pretty well. I think I've only had one person actually contact me since we started this process. It's been relatively quiet, but I anticipate more at the open house. The one thing that I moved off of the work session, item number 12, I was needing to have the mayor and one other council person who may be interested in the Colorado Parks and Wildlife project. This is where they're looking at some city property in regards to where they would locate their permanent office. And we have a couple sites that we've talked about. One will be a standalone CPW building location. The other is a new idea that the chief had in regards to a joint facility with local police and CPW officers. And one location is we're proposing is out on Hospital Road. The other one is out at the Agri Park. So I need to get a letter of intent to them. It'll be a non-binding letter of intent, so I'm not going to put in dollar figures, things like that, but just how we want to work together. So I needed the mayor and one other council person who is interested in Colorado Parks and Wildlife to be part of a small group to shape up that letter.
I'll do that, Monty. Yeah, I'm interested.
Well, yeah, I got two.
You pick.
It doesn't matter to me either way.
I feel like Justin would have more Parks and Wildlife.
This excites me, really
Yeah.
does.
Are you a-
Kind of
are you a
fit
hunter or
right up
something?
his alley.
No, not at all.
I'm a fisherman.
Oh, okay.
So I'll contact you both sometime this week, and we'll get together so that I can explain a little bit more in detail. And then we'll try and get a letter drafted here pretty quickly because they are in their process of determining funding, location, and what concept that they would like to use.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Very good. Mayor and council reports. Anything to report?
Happy Valentine's Day?
No. It's been so nice spending Valentine's Day with y'all.
On that note, I had a quick thought, because I disagreed with Rick's everything today outside of his, but what I was sitting here thinking as you all were talking, that I've said it before, I'm gonna say it again, we have the best frickin' staff. You guys are amazing, and I honestly couldn't imagine a single person better than you guys. So thank you all. Again, we love you guys. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Good.
I think you're just okay.
That means a lot.
I think he's too windy.
I'm gonna make it longer.
All right.
Can you? Don't challenge me.
So we will adjourn and move into our work session. What do I really need to do?
Madam Mayor, do we need to give a small break?
Yeah, can we-
Okay.